So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this, which is our fifth webinar in the AICGS Bundestag's election series, going over the course of 2021. Today's topic is the left party, Die Linke. We've previously covered the CDU, the SPD, the AfD, and the Greens. And please look forward to an event on the FDP in several weeks, and then later some events on foreign policy implications of the election, as well as talking to some pollsters about what's going on with the horse race. So we have lots of programming, but today we're going to focus on the left party. I do want to thank our collaborators and sponsors for this webinar, the International Association for the Study of German Politics, the Aston Europe Center, the BMW Center for German and European Studies at Georgetown University, and then the very generous support of the Foreign Ministry of the Federal Republic of Germany through the Embassy to the United States, and in particular the German Information Center. But without further ado, I would like to hand the floor over to our moderator for today's event, Dr. Barbara Donovan, who is a professor of political science at Wesleyan College. Barbara.
Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon and welcome. I look forward to today's discussion. We have two excellent speakers from each side of the Atlantic. Let me introduce to you Jonathan Olson, who is an old friend, longtime colleague, but Jonathan Olson is department chair and professor of political science at Texas Women's University in Denton, Texas. He has written widely on the left party, analyzing the path that it has taken since it was the SED and then the PDS. He is author of a number of books, including one on the left party and another on left parties more generally. And some of his most recent work looks at the left party in context of increased competition from the AfD to be the party of the Eastern German protest vote. Our second speaker is Gabriele Zimmer. She was one of the co-founders of the Party of Democratic Socialism, formerly the SED, and then the Left Party. She served as a member of the Thuringian Landtag from 1990 to 2004, and as a member of the European Parliament from 2004 to 2019. And in 2012, became chair of the European Parliament group, the European United Left, Nordic Green Left. So this is going to be an excellent conversation. Jonathan's going to start us off. Each panelist will speak for about 15 minutes. There is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If questions come up as either one of these panelists is speaking, please put your questions in the box. I will be collecting questions both during and then after for the sake of our conversation that will come at the end of the two presentations. Thank you so much. On to you, Jonathan.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. And thank you, Eric and AICGS for the invitation. It's been tuning into the series so far, and it's been really terrific and informative. So it's a pleasure to be part of this panel. It's also an honor to be here with Gabi Zimmer, who knows more about the Linke than anyone. Today, in my presentation, I'm really just going to do the kind of a setup of where the Linke finds itself today going into election year. So I've got some slides I'll put up here. Okay. All right. So, sorry, the Linke in Superwahljahr 2021. It's a Superwahljahr because we have a number of state elections. We've already had a couple, and we have, I guess, three or four coming up. Around the time of the Bundestag election. So things I'm going to talk about today are 4 points, really. Looking back on the Linke's recent electoral fortunes, looking back over about 4 election cycles. So is this a glass half full or a glass half empty? I think there's some contradictory things going on in terms of public support for the Linke. And that's been shown in the last couple of election cycles. Then I'm going to look at national state elections in 2021, looking at the polling right now for the Bundestag election and for state elections, and then the coalition possibilities for the Linke. Finally, briefly, I'm going to talk about leadership changes in the Linke, recent leadership changes. They've got a new double leadership to women, which is really quite a remarkable thing, because I think the only time that's happened is with the Greens, when they had a Doppelspitze with two women. Briefly talk about the election program, just some highlights, and then conclude with the future direction of Linke, and that'll make a nice transition to Gabi talking about her analysis of where the Linke stands today. So, looking back at the last four national elections for the Linke, what we can see is that the Left Party has had pretty steady election results in these last four election cycles, with the exception of 2009, which is their best total so far. They got almost 12% of the vote. That was the first election after the full merger of the PDS and the WASG. They ran together in 2005, but you hadn't had the full party merger then, and that was their best total. They fell back down in 2013, and then in 2017, they increased their vote slightly, about 0.6 percentage points. But if you just look at this aggregate total over the last four election cycles, you can see that they're pretty steady. So that's good news. They will definitely make it into the next Bundestag. I don't think there's any danger at all. They're going to fall below 5%. The question is how much they're going to get, and whether it will be more like 2017, 2013, if it's going to be in that range, a little bit more, a little bit less. However, going on the glass half empty side, if we look at what actually happened in 2017, the Linke made gains in Western Germany. It made gains all over Western Germany, all the Western German states, but it lost a significant amount of its voters in Eastern Germany. So you can see the percentages that it went down. The average across all of Eastern Germany, excluding East Berlin, but if you put East Berlin in there as well, you'd also see vote losses. So in Thüringen, Saxony-Anhalt, Saxony, Mecklenburg, West Pomerania, and Brandenburg, they lost anywhere from 4 to 6% compared to 2013, and that represents about a fifth of their voters in Eastern Germany in 2017 compared to 2013. So it was pretty dramatic that the Linke lost so much of their vote in their historic heartland of Eastern Germany, which was, of course, compensated somewhat by their gains in Western Germany, and that's why they had a slightly higher percentage of the vote, but still, it's concerning. If you look then at state elections, that is also a negative sign for the Linke in Eastern Germany. As you see, sorry, I have to go back. The most recent elections in gray versus the previous election, you can see that they have suffered losses in all their state elections with two exceptions. First, Berlin, but that's a little bit of an outlier because the previous election was in 2011, before their electoral fortunes took a downturn. And Thüringen, which is quite unusual because they've got a very popular, the Left Party is very popular there, a popular leader in Bodo Ramelow. So Thüringen is definitely an exception to this general rule, but you see that those election losses all over Eastern Germany at both the national election in 2017 and subsequent state elections show that the Left Party has lost some of its place as the undisputed kind of Eastern German party. That also has consequences, of course, for representation in state government. So the graph or the chart I have up here is the small parties represented in state parliaments. Now I put small in quotation marks because this was the traditional way of referring to any other party except the Union and the Social Democrats. But of course, the Greens are no longer really a small party with the percentage of the vote that they're getting in some state elections and if the forecasts hold in the national elections. Nevertheless, you can compare the Linke to the AFD, the FDP, and the Greens. You see that the AFD is represented everywhere, in every state parliament. The Greens are represented in most state parliaments. And then the Linke and the FDP are kind of a mirror image of each other. That is, the Linke are represented in all the eastern state parliaments, but they're missing in quite a few western state parliaments, and the FDP is just the reverse. So if you just look at the Linke, they did not make it into the parliament they have not made it into the parliament in Bavaria, Baden-Württemberg, North Rhine-Westphalia, Niedersachsen, Rhineland-Pfalz, Schleswig-Holstein. So the Linke they're unrepresented in large parts of Western Germany. And of course, that's not only important in and of itself for their place in Western Germany and their place in the party system, but it's also important for their votes in the Bundesrat when they're missing. So even though, if you think about what happened in 2017, they had a better vote result nationally, a better vote result in the Bundestag election in Western Germany, but nevertheless in state elections in the West, it's still quite uneven. All right, so now moving ahead to looking at the Linke in this election year. So we look at the Sonntagsfrage, that is the weekly poll on voters' intentions. I've just taken a snapshot here every 6 months since 2017. And you see, once again, the Linke have kept fairly steady, but it has been a slight downward trend. So they hit their highest vote, or this highest poll in the Sonntagsfrage in June of 2018 at around 10%. And right now they are anywhere, depends on the poll that you look at, anywhere between 7 and 8%. Now that would represent about a percentage point or so, maybe a little bit more, down from their total in 2017. So again, the trends are not especially good. They're not bad, but they're not especially good for the Linke. Then if you look at the polling for all parties in the Bundestag election, right now, you can see that the Linke is the smallest party. So if this trend holds, then the Linke will be the smallest party in the Bundestag. They'll get into the Bundestag, no question, but they'll be the smallest party represented. Just to flip it again one more time for the glass half full. I've been talking in the last couple of slides about the glass half empty, but the glass half full again. The current poll numbers for the party in upcoming state elections look better. Okay, so the last election on the left-hand side and the current poll on the right-hand side, you can see that the Linke are polling better than they did in their last state election. Okay, so what we're going to see, and I think it's going to be very interesting when we have the vote, when we have the Bundestag election, looking at the breakdown, how the Linke are going to come out, because it's a challenge right now for the Linke to put it all together. That is, to recover their vote totals in the East and keep an upward trend in the West and even improve that trend in the West so they can get a larger national vote total. And right now it's just kind of, it's very much a mixed bag. So then that brings us to the coalition possibilities. So right now, these are all the various coalition possibilities, the colorfully named ones like Kenya and Jamaica and Traffic Light Coalition. You're going to need at least 300 seats for the majority, and right now red, green, that is the Social Democrats, the Linke, and the Greens are under that mark. And I think it would take quite a bit for the red, green coalition to become mathematically viable, and it would take even more, I think, for it to have a comfortable majority in order to be a preferred for the left party to be a preferred coalition party for either the Social Democrats or the Greens. So that's going to be somewhat questionable. Of course, there could be surprises. You never quite know. And coalition talks, even though you might have a mathematical majority, it all comes down to the coalition negotiations and seeing who can work with whom and where the policy overlap occurs. So, so you never can close it out, but right now it's not looking great for red, green. All right, so then turning to a couple of things impacting the dynamics of the vote and the polling for the left party. We've got a new leadership that came in March, I believe, with these two women leaders, as I've talked about before. Susanne Hennig-Velso, she's the parliamentary leader in Thüringen. Usually she is put on the pragmatic side of the party. She served under Ramelow, so representing the pragmatic and eastern part of the party. And then Wissler, who's the parliamentary leader in Hessen, who is strongly supported by the left wing, so the Westerner, the left side of the party and so forth. And that's always what the left party has to negotiate, is this balance between East and West, between pragmatists or reformers and the farther left part of the party. And the question always becomes, will those two parts of the party, how well will they work together? There's always going to be some friction, but whether they're going to be able to work together effectively, and whether these two women are going to be able to work effectively with each other as co-party leader. So Hennig-Velso received about 75% of the vote of the party delegates, and Wissler about 85%. I don't know what that says exactly. They both got strong majorities, but Wissler got a little bit more. Anyway, so that is an open question for the party, how those two are going to work together. If we look at the election program for 2021, there are no real surprises here, I would say, when I look at the draft election program. The stress is, as always, on social justice, and the Linke always does very well with that. When voters are asked, where they think the party competence lies for different parties, the left party always comes out ahead on this issue of social justice. So falling underneath that are some of these proposals to raise the minimum wage to 13 euros, to raise pensions, to lower the eligibility age for pensions, and then finance through a wealth tax, through a higher inheritance tax, getting rid of this so-called debt break, where where you don't have an automatic break kicking in when you're spending too much. So obviously they want to get rid of that. And then finally, larger investments in Eastern Germany, of course, which is again the historic profile of the left party. Equalization of wages and pension across both East and West, and then broadband access in large parts of Eastern Germany, which the East finds itself behind the West in this respect. One of the big things I think that sticks out, however, is the big obstacle for red, green still. I don't think it's so much in the social issues and economic issues, but it's in foreign policy issues. So specifically the left's position, the Linke's position on NATO, it still remains a plank of the party that they want Germany out of NATO. They want to dissolve NATO. They want a new security arrangement. And I don't see any signs that the SPD or the Greens are going to budge on that. Whether there's going to be some fuzziness, if red, green becomes a real possibility, I don't know. If there's some fuzziness, some wiggle room on the part of the left, I'm not quite sure. But right now, it's still an obstacle. All right, so brings me to my conclusion, and then I'll turn it over to Gabi. So the points that stick out, first of all, is very slim chance for red, green. It's not that it can't happen, but I think it's quite unlikely. And the left party will be it's likely to be the smallest party in the new Bundestag. I think the difficulty, and of course Gabi can speak to this more, is that the Linke finds itself in electoral competition with the Greens and the SPD everywhere, for a similar, I won't say identical electorate, but a similar electorate on the left side of the political spectrum. And there's some things in which the left party looks a lot like the Greens, competing for that younger urban vote. There are parts where the left party looks a lot like the SPD, competing for the older unionist vote. So that's the electoral competition for the left party. And then finally, in competition with the AFD, even though the policies are completely different, the competition with the AFD for this populist kind of anti-establishment vote in Eastern Germany. It's not that the left party is a populist anti-establishment party, but they've always been able to draw on some segment of the electorate that is strongly Eastern German populist anti-establishment. And the AFD has taken a lot of that, has made inroads to that vote. And you see that both in the gains for the AFD in Eastern Germany with the simultaneous losses for the left party, as well as some of the exit polling question, which suggests that the AFD is seen by a growing number of the Eastern German electorate as the party that represents Eastern interests, which was always the territory of the Linke. And then the final point is, it's an open question. Will the new leadership take the Linke forward or reproduce some old struggles in the party? And that's just the point I was bringing up earlier, which is how well will the two wings of the party work together? How well will the two leaders work with each other? Will they be able to have a unified vision, a unified voice, or are we going to have a cacophony of different voices taking or trying to speak for the Linke in one direction or another, which exposes divisions? Okay, so I will go ahead and turn this over to Gabi now to give a deeper analysis.
Should I start? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jonathan, also for your explanation and your analysis. I think it was very great. I support all your conclusions you made, and that's why let me make some additional explanations. Concerning the left, you said also the left was formed 2007 from the merger of two source parties, the former Party of Democratic Socialism, PDS, and WASG. It's, the name is Labor and Social Justice, the Electoral Alternative. The membership and the supporters at that time embodied the most diverse left political and trade union directions from more than 60 years of German history and the entire left ideological spectrum. The members of the new left-wing party came from different political cultural milieus. Their political and also social biographies, which were determined by two different social systems, differed completely and had in some cases hardly any points of contact in the past. 40 years of division of Germany had also led to 40 years of divided development of left forces, to differences in languages and also political culture. But now we have more than 60,000 members. But I would like to remind, when we were a communist party in the former GDR, we had 1.2 million members only in the eastern part. And there you can see the change we had in Germany among the left. But now 60,000 members, and 37% of members are women. We have, as with the Greens, the principle of equal filling of party functions, and parity lists of polling lists applies. Die Linke is also a member of the European Left Party. And I think this is a very important decision that we take in the past. We were also co-founder of the European Left Party. But we have also to say that during European elections to the European Parliament, we also lost in the last election support. Looking to what is going now in Germany, we have to say that all the contradictions, all the conflicts, the global conflicts in Germany are also marked by global threats. Climate change, increasing violence, a new Cold War is very, people have the feeling that is very dangerous for us, and also a very strong division of societies into rich and poor, the global migration movement and others. The corona pandemic has also shown in Germany that catastrophic consequences of saving public infrastructures and public services. And after decades of neoliberal policies also in Germany, more and more people are demanding the acting and regulating state. And this will be one of the main issues we have to discuss also during the electoral campaigns. This will be also part of the competition between the different political parties who are interested in to join the next Bundestag. I'm sure you have heard it in the last weeks and months. The conservative CDU, CSU, they were losing support because Angela Merkel will not start again to the next Bundestag or to be a chancellor. And there is a lack of leadership in the conservative parties, in two parties. Might be today in the evening, in the night, they will find the common solution to win one of different candidates for a chancellor candidate. The Greens today decided that Annalena Baerbock will be a very, very good candidate for a chancellor. She's a young woman. She's an excellent woman. She's able to convince people. She has a lot of knowledge about Germany, about details also in German politics. Yes, she will be a very hard concurrent for everyone and competitor for everyone from the conservatives. There are many indications that the Greens and also the conservatives are coming together in the end of the election, might be. And this will mean we will have a change in the government, but we will not have a change in the political direction. And this is the main difference between the three middle left parties, liberal left parties, green left parties in Germany. If, however, neither the Social Democrats succeeds in getting out of its historical low, nor Die Linke in significantly increasing its electoral base, the change of direction, which I believe it's urgently needed in this election, will not be possible. In this direction, I would like to answer on the question Jonathan made in the beginning. Is the glass half filled or is it half empty? I would like to say it's both. It's half empty and it's half filled. And that's why I think we have to look more on what is going on inside the left. I think one of the main problems in the understanding of left parties, not only in Germany, also looking to the left parties inside the European Union. You can look to Spain, to France, to all of the different left parties. They have to understand, they have to become aware of their relative weakness. They would like to change a lot. They would like to change the whole world, but they are too weak to do it concretely and in a short time. The question is how social developments can be initiated under these conditions. And for that, the left, Die Linke in Germany, is also in a strategic dilemma. Is it able to win votes, particularly among workers in industry and services, in the precariat, in rural areas, and among non-voters? Unfortunately, the left lost the first serve. In times of the corona crisis, it failed to remain able to act as a party nationwide and together with other left parties in Europe or EU. The regular re-election of a board was postponed several times. Necessary debates about strategy, program, and personnel were only narrowed. Moreover, the party was not visible enough with its own proposals to combat the pandemic. An exception was the initiative to support nurses who struggle to survive corona patients in the most difficult conditions and are sent home on a pitiful wage. In the summer of last year, and Jonathan also made a short link to that, in the midst of the corona crisis, the two then leaders of the party Die Linke published a text, strategy text, in which they thought the moment had come to proclaim Die Linke as part of an upcoming red-green government after the next Bundestag election. This caused astonishment among many political activists. In particular, the assessment differed in the social balances of power, the possibilities of social changes, and the will to change of the political forces. There was no clarification of the content of what the aim of such government participation should be. The orientation to win over voters, especially from the Greens and the Social Democrats, was unfounded. First, we take the voters from them, but then, after the election, we would like to form a common government. It's not possible to do so. It's clear that a red-green alliance must increase its own electoral potential in order to achieve majorities as a whole. I myself have serious doubts that the conditions for a change of political direction are in place at this stage, or that they can be achieved by September 2021. Nevertheless, I too am counting on a committed campaign of Die Linke. Many members and supporters want to get involved. Die Linke should be able to repeat or slightly improve its result of the last Bundestag election. And as we have seen, this will not be enough for a change of balance of power. A few weeks ago, the party congress, which was postponed several times because of the corona pandemic took place. Young people, many of whom belong to the new founded platform Movement Left, party on the move, will hopefully break the paralysis into which the party's leadership and the party at all has maneuvered itself in recent years. With the enthusiasm they have been given, they stand for a hopefully sustainable departure and recovery, a breath of fresh air. Two younger women currently lead the party. You have presented the two young women, and I'm hopefully that they are able to bring together the party and that they find that they are able to build also a bridge between the many different wings and platforms we have inside the party. The first steps are hopefully the draft of the Linke election program, which was presented by the former leadership of the party, was revised now and put into public discussion last week. The one-sided orientation towards the government participation is not found there. The draft is aimed at the electorate, avoiding the impression that it wants to pacify internal party trench warfare in particular. Of course, Die Linke would like to be elected. In the program, the party represents the opinion on a wide variety of topics. But then, now it's crucial to pick out the main points at which it can actually drive developments from the left. For example, our demand for a different social rent policy in Germany. This is one of the points I would like to pick out of the program of Die Linke and would like to explain. The main last week, the Federal Constitutional Court declared the rent cap that had been adopted by Red, Green in the capital Berlin to be invalid. The main issue was a dispute over competences as to what Berlin was allowed to decide and what not. It's now clear that new laws are needed on the federal level in order to enforce a different rental policy and for a right, especially for a right to affordable housing, against evictions into homelessness, for a rent freeze wherever the situation arises, housing market is tight. Die Linke also calls for speculation with housing on the stock exchange to be stopped and global real estate groups to be expropriated. In Berlin in particular, dealing with Vonovia, Deutsche Wohnen or BlackRock also plays a major role. And that shows that we have particular same fights for the left, not only in Germany, but also in the USA or worldwide. It's the same problems. There is now a strong alliance between Die Linke and various tenant initiatives. And we have now a real chance from within society and also with other parties to achieve nationwide improvements for social and ecological living conditions. What I mean is it's not now the time to speculate about red, green in the Bundestag. But what we have to do now is to do all to change the balance power now, looking for the next Bundestag, but the time after. I think we have to look for the time 2025. This could be a better option because also the Social Democrats have to come out of their loss, of the historical low situation. And the Greens are now more interested in to go to the center of society to form a coalition as in Baden-Württemberg with the conservatives and not looking for a concrete left policy. Yes, Annalena Baerbaum, the Green candidate for chancellor, she was telling today, I'm not standing for the status quo. These are doing other candidates. I'm standing for a change. But there is not a change of policy at all. She is focusing most of all on climate change. There she will get a lot of support also by the left, by the Social Democrats, by others, also parts of the conservatives. But not changing, not bringing together all the left political forces in Germany to get more justice in Germany, especially for poor people or for the precariat people. And this is one of the main things. Last, because of the time, I would like also to say a short thing to why. So the question, why has die Linke, not yet come out of its defensive? Why is it so difficult to take control of action and to prove itself as a socialist party that aggressively pursues socialist politics? And it has to do with a fundamental problem of the party Die Linke. The party has been stagnating for some time, for some years. You have shown it in your pictures. The poll ratings are stable between 7% and 8%, but we will not get more in the moment. Important demands with which Die Linke rightly exerted massive pressure on the SPD and the Social Democrats in the first years, such as the halting of sanctions against unemployed people, job seekers, the fight against precarious employment conditions, and so on, have now arrived in the society, also half-heartedly, without being written in public for the benefit of Die Linke. With the international financial economic crisis, That's about neoliberal economic and financial policies, and the deregulation of the state also grew in the Federal Republic of Germany. The SPD made the first slight course corrections. The trade unions as a whole turned back to the Social Democrats, but this did not change the lost confidence of many former SPD voters. Topics for which Die Linke also stood, combating poverty and its social structures, more direct democracy, or sustainable socio-ecological transformation, were hardly found in the media. The original, and this is the main point, the original function of the Party Die Linke, its founding and its founding mythos have survived. And it must be able to turn a poor defender of social interest into a champion now of comprehensive social, ecological, and peace political transformation. This is the main challenge the Die Linke, the left, has to face. Unfortunately, Die Linke has failed to conduct the necessary debate on its role in political competition in the longer term in the run-up to the election. Now, for this election, is it too late to come out of this defensive for a long time, for a strategic change? But we have now to do it, and it's not possible to pass this time, to wait till the next Bundestag election. We have to do it now. When we will get more success, when we will get more recognition in the society, when we will get more votes, and we have to accept, not to accept, but we have to learn that we as a left, as a small party, we will not be able to change the world one-to-one, to change the society one-to-one. And for that, we need clarity with whom we want to change. What should be the first steps on the way to another political direction, to another social direction in Germany and Europe, or also on a global level? And that's why I have to say we have to do it. We have to work. And last sentence, you just can't drive in the sixth gear with a handbrake on. It's not possible. You have to change your own behavior. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. Those really complemented each other very, very well, with the sort of broad overview, and then with also the really interesting presentation, which really took a perspective that comes from within the party more so. So one presentation from the outside looking in, and the other one from the inside looking out. I have a couple of questions that are beginning to accumulate, and I'd like more as well. So please feel free to add questions to the Q&A. But before we go there, I just wanted to, one of the things that kept coming up in my mind was, what are the different factions in the party, and how do they, Jonathan, you talked about, sort of a similar green dynamic between, or a dynamic to the Greens with the Realos and the Fundis, so the pragmatists and the fundamentalists. And then Gabi, you talk about all the challenges that come with respect to really charting a strategy forward. What addition, are there generational issues within the party between older generations and younger generations? I note that these two leaders come from a younger generation. Is there tension between Eastern perspectives and Western perspectives? What does from both of you, what do you know of the inside of the party in terms of the different factions and groupings, and how that represents a challenge? We'll start maybe with Jonathan, and then Gabi.
Well, Gabi will be able to speak to that, yeah. I think, a lot better than I. But yeah, I think the overall, you can say that there's still kind of there's an East-West kind of factionalization, because the parts of the Western part of the party has been more of the farther left-leaning, less pragmatic, whereas the Eastern part of the party, and remember, we had coalition governments involving the Linke in Eastern state governments since the mid 1990s, mid to late 1990s. So, you know, the eastern part of the party was used to going into coalition government, able to make compromises. Sometimes, you know, they were welcomed, sometimes they were damaging, but nevertheless, they had experience doing that. Whereas the new western part of the party, that was not a group of people that had any experience with coalition government. Now, for the first time, you've got coalition government in the West, but it's only in that very small state of Bremen. So there's still, I think, a lack of pragmatic experience in the West that the East has a lot of experience with.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yes, from my side, yes, you're right, Jonathan. It's so, and don't forget that my generation, the generation 60, 65 years old people, members in the party from Eastern Germany, from the former GDR, we were in when the so-called socialist state, when it failed, we were in an age where we started to get over responsibility. That means a lot of us had small experiences on the local level and also on the state level in the former GDR. We were working on the different levels, state institutions, party institutions, and then we had the reunification or the unification to Germany. And a lot of us, a lot of these people were now outside. They had to give up all functions. They didn't get any future, and it was a very hard problem for them. And after some years after, we have seen that it's not enough only to have a broad base inside the former GDR regions. That it's necessary to build up also in the western part a left party and to go together. We need, because Eastern Germany was smaller than Western Germany. And if you would like to go in the Bundestag, you need a support, voter support also from the Western party, it's clear. And that's why we got this, we decided to have a unification, not a reunification, a unification with this part from Western Germany, the so-called WASG, former members of the Social Democrats, most of all, and left members of trade unions in the Western Germany, and they had totally together, totally other experiences in political work or in trade union work, and so on. And of course, we have now, let's go one step back. When I started to first in my life, when I have seen a left discussion, followed the left discussion in Western part, I was shocked. I was shocked because I have seen left members of different groups, left groups and parties, they fight another. It was not a fight or a discussion about what we should do to improve the living conditions of the people in the Western part. It was a fight against each other. And I was shocked about that. And we had Maoists, former Stalinists, all of them. That's why I said in the beginning of my speech that we have all ideological directions of the left of the last 60 years. We have it inside. Yeah.
Let me throw two questions in there from our audience that help that push you a little bit further. So one person asks whether or not there is a leadership vacuum in the Linke, or even a vacuum in the Linke, given the difficult strategic dilemma of the Linke squeezed between the lifestyle voters moving to the Greens and the disgruntled workers flirting with the AfD. And so there's almost sort of a, people are leaving, voters are leaving, ideas are leaving, and what's left for the Linke? Someone else asks, is it possible that the Linke lacks a cohesive ideological framework which gives voters a clear understanding of its goals? So is there it's not just a leadership vacuum, it's a policy vacuum, it's an idea vacuum. Any thoughts on that? Provocative idea?
Well, I mean, I'll say one thing about the leadership vacuum. I'm not sure it's actually a leadership vacuum, but what you can say is that, the Linke had two leaders for many years, at least two leaders for many years, who had a lot of charisma and a lot of attraction outside what you could call the base of the Linke's voters. And I'm thinking of Gregor Gysi, right? And then Oscar Lafontaine. Mm-hmm. And, there are downsides to having that charismatic kind of personality, but the upsides is certainly that it gained the Linke attraction beyond maybe their normal clientele of voters. You don't have that right now, or at least it's not proven right now with the Linke. So when they're in this intense competition on the left side of the spectrum, or when any party has that competition, charisma can make a difference. And I think the CDU is, of course, discovering that right now with trying to find a chancellor candidate who not only appeals to the base of the party, but has some attraction outside and has some charisma. So I think, the Linke is not unusual in that respect. Gabi will probably have some important things to add on that.
Yes, of course. I think these two young women, they have charisma. But of course, they are not so known on the national level. They have to start, they have to bring it, and they have to be supported by the whole party. And that's why I hope that they will work together and that they can also overcome the two different positions they have inside their own persons. One of them is a representative more of the radical left, and the other is saying, I'm a representative of the left for government. And to bring this together and to say, this is not the moment. We have to say who should be the winner between of them, but how to bring it together and form a new attractive policy. That will be the main problem. If you look to the Greens, we have some common points, looking to fighting global warming and saying what we have to do in Germany, in the European Union on that level. We are together on the position on supporting migration policy, a human migration and refugee policy, to be against the kind of policies the European Union is doing on the borders, especially on the Mediterranean. And the difference is looking to the people who are in the precariat, looking to social rights, especially concrete social rights. There we have differences also with the Greens. In the Social Democratic Party, we have now also a new leadership since some months, a year, round about a year. And they were going now more to the left side. And I think between Social Democrats and the left, there are more positions conform.
I'm sorry.
This will be the main point. If the Greens would be interested in changing policy at all, I think then also the left, the Social Democrats and the Greens would get benefit for it and would be clearer in her positions. But now you see it's more to a black-green coalition in Germany.
Several members of the audience inquire about foreign policy and the differences between the Left Party and the Greens on foreign policy as being perhaps the sticking point, the main sticking point in any coalition considerations. Right. And would you both agree with that? And do you think there's room for flexibility there, or is that going to be very problematic?
It's very problematic.
Yeah.
We have different positions looking to the confrontation we have, the global confrontation we have between the different global forces and powers. Yeah. Looking to the United States, looking to China, looking to Russia. Because a lot of the Linke have more knowledges to Eastern Europe and also to the former Soviet Union and Russia today. We have more, we are more angry about a new confrontation between the systems. Mm-hmm. We fear that the policy also of the German government closer to United States and supporting the policy of United States, military policy and foreign policy, will bring no benefit for the peace in Europe. This is what we fear. And there we have different positions, because the leadership of the Green and also a broad base of the Greens are looking more to Russia as an enemy. Mm-hmm. As an enemy, and saying we have to confront it, but we don't want any confrontation more. We have enough from them. What we need is to involve also Russia, involve also China, involve United States, involve all the regions in the world to find peaceful solutions, to find another way from this confrontation policy. We don't want to get, we have in Germany, we have nuclear weapons from the United States. Why? We don't want them. We are fighting against this, and we are saying we have to bring back the Bundeswehr also from all foreign deployments outside of Germany. And this is a very, very big difference with the Green leadership and a part of the Green base in Germany.
We're running, Yeah, Jonathan?
Just very, very quickly here, and that is, I agree with Gabi Zimmer that those are real obstacles. However, I actually think those things that you could find a very kind of watered down kind of way to, in a coalition agreement, to agree on some things, but it's really going to depend. You have to remember the Greens are going to be the power player in any coalition. And the Greens have lots of options. The SPD has options too, but they're tired of being in a grand coalition. So the SPD is really, I think their options are a lot more limited than the Greens. And I think the strength of the Social Democrats will really determine whether it's going to be a red-green coalition. It's not going to be the strength of the Greens, it's going to be the strength of the Social Democrats.
Mm-hmm. I have one last question, well, two questions. One person asked to cast a perspective on things past the election. And then I'm going to pull in this last question that just came in. Can either speaker envision a pathway out of the problematic situation of a high-level fragmentation on the political left? I think this is a good closing question. Can either speaker envision a pathway out of the problematic situation of a high level of fragmentation on the political left? What would have to happen for a more cohesive left movement to emerge, and what would it look like? And that's a question not just for Germany, but for all of Europe, I think. Jonathan, we'll start with you on that one.
Well, that's a really tough question. I mean, I can evade that answer a little bit by saying, I mean, we have to also think of Merkel and the Union. They have moved relentlessly to the center. I mean, that's kind of a well-known.
That was one of our questions too.
Trope. Exactly. And so as long as they're occupying the middle ground, it doesn't give much air for the Social Democrats. And then that space becomes very crowded on the left. If the Union moves back more to the right, that gives a little bit more space for the Social Democrats. Then you can have this kind of slight division of labor between the Social Democrats occupying the center left and the left party occupying, the farther left. But I don't know how you get around the competition on that left side of the spectrum. And the Greens, of course, they're more of a centrist party now, but they still have their foot in the left camp as well. So I just think it's a crowded space. If we look at some other European countries, I mean, what you see is when you have the rise of other kind of left center parties, whether it be Greens or whether it be the left liberals in the Netherlands, what it means is that the mainstream Social Democratic Party has gone down. So, trying to get the vote totals of all the parties on the left enough to make mathematically possible a center-left coalition is difficult, because it seems to have been really in the last few years a zero-sum game. One goes up, the other goes down.
Yeah. Yes, I also think it depends a little bit also from the candidate for the chancellor. The Conservatives will decide. If they will decide for Markus Söder from the CSU from Bavaria, who is more on the national positions, and who we don't forget that he was also had a strong position concerning migrants, and that he met also with Orban, the president from Hungary, saying we have a problem with the EU or so. If he will take over the leadership, then it will be also a problem for the Greens. How to bring it together in one coalition, these different parts, and it's also not clear if the Liberals, the FDP, will be able to join such a kind of government. We will see it. And then you have not enough space. Not enough space for the left to not. If this will be, voters from the left, from the Social Democrats, will support Greens in the election. I fear it will be so, because I think this will be the real alternative between Conservatives and the Greens, and they have to support the Greens, that the influence and the power of the Greens will be stronger in a possible government after the election. This will be very hard for left parties, also for this part of the Social Democrats. But after that, we have to work closer and to find the common path outside this dilemma. Because it's so, if the left will not be able to answer what should be the future of a left alternative, together with other progressive and democratic forces, we will lose our future. Who needs us if we have no function in the system? This is our problem, and we have to find out a way. And for this, we need crossover processes and discussions between the different wings inside the left, between Social Democrats, between Greens, and also other Democrats, and especially movements, social movements, peace movements, ecological movements, Fridays for Future. With them, we have to change the atmosphere in Germany. So this will be the only way to get the common way out and to find a way how we can pass this stagnation of left forces in Germany. It's the same in all the other EU member states.
All right, I think that we have come to time. So let me thank our speakers one more time. This was really a lot of food for thought, excellent points and analysis. Let me also thank Barbara for such expert moderation. And I hope that everybody already subscribes to our newsletter, The Advisor. If not, please think about doing so. We have lots of analysis in addition to our webinars and podcasts in there. Let me also thank our collaborators and sponsors one more time, and also ask that you look out for announcements about our next events in the series. So have a great day, everybody. Thanks again to Gabi and Jonathan. This was terrific, and we'll talk soon.